Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a fantasy movie review and I'll be having a look at the 2013 movie Hammer of the Gods. So the first portion of this movie review is going to be a spoiler-free review, and then I'm going to have a little portion at the end talking about some spoilers. So this is not to be confused with the similar titled Thor Hammer of the Gods. This is just Hammer of the Gods. So now I'm classing this as a fantasy film really because it's more of I guess it's a cross between a sort of historical film. It's based basically on in England where there's it's pretty much a war between the sort of Saxons and the Vikings, and the Vikings are sort of trying to sort of tighten their grip over the Saxons, and obviously there's a kind of really a war between the sort of the two sides. And it's taken from the point of view of the Viking side, and they've just sort of the film starts, and they've just kind of had some sort of reinforcements arrive, and we see our main characters arrive on this sort of on this longboat, and they are kind of this guy led by Steiner, who's the central character of the film and the film's protagonist, and he's this son of this this sort of Viking king who's sort of currently invading England ultimately, and sort of trying to sort of stave off the Saxons. And he's sort of told early on that his father is has been injured, and he sort of rushes to sort of see him along with this sort of three sort of cohorts. And there we find that his father's been mortally wounded, and sets him on a quest to try and find his heir. Now Steiner actually has an older brother actually in camp, but he looks more of a bureaucrat than anything. And apparently he's also got an older brother who is kind of, we told early on, has kind of gone off the reservation a little bit, and for some reason was kind of dismissed or sort of disgraced somehow, and has disappeared into the sort of the English wilderness at the time. And he's sent off to try and find his brother to sort of find the king who can ultimately lead the Vikings when his father ultimately dies. And therefore we have him going along off on this quest, bringing along his three sort of main cohorts, and a couple of other sort of people they sort of meet on the way, and on a quest really to try and find his brother. And along the way, obviously they encounter Saxons and various different things along the way there. So that's pretty much the plot without really getting into too much of a spoilerish sort of situation. So what was good about this film? So from a technical level, I think this film was very well made. It looked fantastic. I think some of the sort of cinematography was great. I think the direction was fairly solid. Costumes, sets, and everything like that looked good. But here we go. I kind of felt this film was a bit boring, if anything, to be quite honest with you, and that's mainly because I simply didn't care about the characters. Steiner, who is the main protagonist, I personally thought was simply unlikable. He just, I don't know, he had no, to me, I didn't think he had any sort of real charisma, and just wasn't a particularly good leading man. And I thought some of his decisions and things that he'd done along the way were kind of were questionable, in the fact that it didn't make a lot of sense, I didn't think, some of the times. In particular, without sort of going into spoilers, he has a disagreement with one of his sort of cohorts, and who is apparently his kind of best friend, in this sort of church area. And that whole scene, I thought, what the hell? It just seemed a little bit strange, and towards the end of this film as well, it's kind of a little bit, what the hell is going on around here? Now it's a strange mix, because there are moments like this where I was kind of left scratching my head, but other times where I felt this film was the script was very sort of almost cliched and kind of very expectant. Now what I mean by that, for example, is you look at some of the characters, you have this sort of like the thuggish one, you've kind of got the spiritual one in regards to his sort of followers and things like that. So there's kind of quite a few sort of cliches and things like that. You've kind of got the cowardly brother and all blah blah. So that there are quite a lot of cliches, and I didn't, there wasn't a lot of of surprises in this film until I kind of got to the very end of that, and then it kind of took a complete U-turn and went in the complete opposite direction. The acting, I have to say, was okay. I didn't think the acting was bad. Maybe if I had to pick on it, as I said, the main character, I don't know if that was necessarily a problem with his acting, or if it was just he particularly wasn't well written. But he didn't come across to me as a particularly good character, and I think maybe it was kind of maybe it was a marriage of the two. Maybe his delivery wasn't fantastic. I don't think the character was particularly well written either. The soundtrack is very distracting in this film. There are certain fight scenes where it actually plays. It sounds like it's playing some sort of Skrillex type band, or sort of, dubstep or something like that. And because obviously, this is a Viking period piece, it way takes you out of it, and it's very, very distracting. And I find myself just sort of listening to this kind of like dubstep soundtrack when I'm kind of watching this sort of Vikings and Saxon fights and things like that. Very, very distracting. It's not all the way through, but it does have some sort of areas of more traditional score. But in certain things, it's kind of this weird, and then sometimes as well, kind of almost like a sort of like heavy metal sections. So the soundtrack, I'm not so keen on that. So I'm going to give this film a 5 out of 10. So from this point on, I'm going to get into a little bit more of a spoilery bit. So if you haven't seen the film so far, 5 out of 10. Now, if you have seen the film, like I said, I kind of want to talk about the ending, because this is kind of, it goes really kind of weird when he ultimately sort of finds his brother. And I felt he's kind of, so he finds his brother, and his brother is, turned out to be a proper nut job. But the issue I had with it, he was told that going in, we're told he's a nut job going in, and yet he sort of defies all his friends. His friends are sort of saying, no, we should just wait till your father dies. Just wait, then you can sort of take over this other brother who's going on this bureaucrat one, and we'll all support you to be king and whatever. But he's no, I've got to find my brother. This is what my father's sort of dying wish is. Going to find my brother, going to bring him back. Despite the fact that everyone sort of has said he's a total lunatic, whatever. And sure enough, he's a total lunatic, and he's kind of got this weird sort of cult of like cannibals or something. And he's completely, and they have this kind of fight, and he kind of just kills him pretty much straight away within sort of probably 10 minutes of them first meeting ultimately. And it's just like, well, there you go. So that was the whole film is kind of pointless. Now we have a line at the end where he sort of comes back and he sort of he says to his dying father, yeah, got there, where's your brother? His head's in a bag. And he's, oh look, we sent for a king and now we found one. But that to me, I didn't quite buy that, because I'm sorry, but if you're this dying king, how would you know that was going to be what was happening there? That to me just seemed a little bit too convenient that sort of end actually happened the way it did. So I wasn't quite buying that. So I kind of felt the end was, the whole film was ultimately a little pointless. At the end, the end result is, he's this kind of leader of all these sort of Vikings, but he could have done that anyway, because his friends and said that all of the men would be behind him if he chose to be this leader. Yes, you could argue maybe that his Steiner's, he may have been a different person, may not have been quite as hard as he was, but all he really succeeded in doing was killing his closest friends off. Well, he didn't kill them, but he got his closest friends killed, and he became the leader, which he could have done anyway. There you go. So it's a kind of mixed feeling, because that last sort of quarter of this film really does take a left turn. So I can't sort of accuse it of being necessarily what I was expecting on that last sort of section of this film, but nevertheless, I not necessarily liked it. Overall, like I said, technically on this film, I thought it was pretty good, and it's got an actor but my favourite character, his best friend, who the issue that I had with it was when he killed him, and this is the guy who plays Rollo in the Viking TV series. That I didn't like, because I didn't see the logic in that personally. But there you go. I have a few issues with this film's internal logic, but overall I wasn't all that gripped. And I think part of that, the main issue, I guess, apart from the weirdness, is that just the characters aren't particularly likeable, and especially Steiner as the main character. So 5 out of 10, not too bad, as I say, from a technical perspective, and it looks great, and it's there are some sort of nice atmospheric shots and things like that, and the countryside looks great. I think the kind of costumes look great and things like that. I did kind of feel sorry for the Saxons, I have to say, because they seem to be fairly kind of diplomatic and smart, and yet they're kind of almost the bad guys of the majority of this film. And they seem to kind of get slaughtered pretty easily, even though they're actually sort of trying to kind of come to a sort of diplomatic solution, but they're kind of killed off, pretty easily. Anyway, there you go. 5 out of 10 for this film. Mixed feelings about it, so I'm going to give it straight down the middle. Let me know what you think and leave me a comment. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.